This is Awareness Explorers.
Welcome back, fellow explorers, to Awareness Explorers. Always great to have you. And I'm Jonathan. I'm here with my partner and friend,
Brian Tom O'Connor.
There we go. And, some of these episodes we plan pretty much, and others, it's a straight exploration with a topic. I like those because it keeps us on our toes. And today we're going to be talking about rituals and how they can be impactful in creating a way to experience deeper peace, love, and joy in life, and how it might connect with other methods of consciousness. There's a lot I've been looking into about this, Brian. As you might know, I just got back from Italy visiting a spiritual community named Damanhur that really has taken ritual technology to a new level. And I learned a lot while spending several days there and have been thinking about it. But, it's interesting that the word spiritual is really made up of two words, spirit, ritual. And I think that is a sign that it's an important technology, an important prelude to awakening and into getting into deeper levels of love and peace in daily life. But when we thought of doing this episode on rituals, what ritualized thinking went through your head?
Well, I thought it was a great opportunity to have one of those sessions where I really have not done any research or any thinking about it whatsoever. And I thought, well, let's have you let us know what you've been thinking and your experience at Damanhur. And I'll just see what kinds of curiosity that arouses in me.
That sounds great. Just so everybody's on the same page, I want to talk for a minute or two just about what I think of as rituals and a little bit of history before we go into methods and value and things like that. But, rituals all over the place when you start to look for them. It's kind of like when you start looking for a certain type of car, you start to see it all over the place. But I think there's more conscious and deliberate ways of using it, especially for consciousness, because, rituals are used in religion a lot. They're used in corporations. They're used in every culture, from Christmas to Easter to holidays to saying grace to corporate seminars. But what makes them kind of unique is when they're infused with meaning and intention that's alive. Rituals are different than habits, in that habits are just mechanical things that don't do much for us, but rituals used in the right way can really make a huge difference. So I think of it as a technology that can be used to access certain states of consciousness or certain things that are helpful for consciousness. And the mistake a lot of people make is they just stay with rituals that become habits and they're no longer alive for them. So they're not doing as much good as they could. But there's a lot of different types of rituals you can learn and do and really have fun with it. And I've found in the last 2 weeks since coming back from that spiritual community that I'm playing with it and having a really good time. But I just threw a bunch of stuff at you, give you time to respond in any way you want.
Well, I think that rituals, I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, my experience of rituals from growing up has not been positive because they weren't meaningful to me. They were just things that you were forced to do without understanding what they were. But if it's a ritual that you're engaged in because you want to, because it's your choice to, and because it helps activate the imagination, it helps visualize certain ways of looking at the world or ways of recognizing your nature as oneness, then I think it's great. Although I do think that a caveat here is, one of our recent episodes with Pernilla and Todd Lent-Dumore, in which we talked about the 10 Buddhist fetters. And the third fetter is attachment to rites and rituals. But they said specifically believing that spiritual progress can be achieved solely through rituals or outward practices without genuine understanding or practice. So how would you how would you make a distinction between rituals that are sort of empty or without true spiritual understanding and those that actually have the understanding baked in?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, think of a ritual. We live often in a superficial level of consciousness because there's so much we're doing. If you're busy or you're working or you're on the computer. So I think of rituals often as a transition method that has meaning and intention to kind of slide you back into a deeper place of yourself, back into your true nature when you have lost it or you're more in a superficial state of mind. So in order to do that, you have to have a ritual that's alive, that means something to you. So if you're just going to a church service, that doesn't necessarily help you. It might just be what you do habitually, or some people might just, mechanically say grace before a meal. They haven't really done anything. They haven't tapped into the feeling of connection with a higher power or gratitude. They're just doing a mechanical routine. So I think it's important that we don't get stuck with rituals from our culture or our religions or our past that are no longer really serving this transitional function.
That's interesting. And I like what you said about tapping into the feeling of connection to something higher than ourselves or higher power, however you put it. To me, that's really important, tapping into the feeling. But the other question I had from what you just described is, do you think that rituals that we grew up with are less effective than rituals that might be new to us that we discover on our own and become involved in?
I think in general that's true because rituals that we grew up with are for a mass audience. It may or may not apply to your nature. It may not, and after many years, it may be completely a habit at this point and no longer serving its function as a transitional tool. So when you create your own ritual, it's probably more suitable to you. For example, like when I was growing up in a Jewish household, we'd go to, temple services. They didn't mean anything to me. Were in Hebrew. I hated it. You could still go back there, but why? More important would be me finding some way to connect with my heart or higher power. It might involve one of 20 different methods I'm going to talk about today. Some of these methods are so part of you now that you don't even maybe even think of them as a ritual. Like I know you like reading spiritual books,
Mm-hmm.
not part of my thing so much, but that's a ritual to get you into a deeper place within yourself. So it might be listening to music. And, music for me, I often listen to a song before I meditate. And that is a way to transition from, maybe working on the computer to meditation. So you want to find ones that seem to really be alive and work for you. And then notice that they sometimes become dull and you have to come up with a new one.
Mm-hmm. I remember a friend of mine who was a Reiki master and also involved in other kinds of rituals was doing offered to do a ritual for me, and I was lying on a table and
Uh-huh.
had all sorts of amulets and things and stuff like that. And for her, it was a meaningful ritual. For me, it didn't seem to have a meaning, so I didn't really receive or notice, or maybe I was not sensitive enough. But I thought, wow, what if I created my own ritual?
Yeah.
One that involved certain show tunes, for example.
Uh-huh.
I thought, oh, that would be great to just take like a classic Reiki ritual or a classic Catholic mass or anything and insert things that are meaningful to me, songs that mean something to me into it and see if it has an effect.
Yeah, absolutely. I lead people on MDMA journeys a lot, and I ask them, what would be a nice ritual you could do before a session that would help you to recognize this as a profound experience. The medicine will do a lot of the heavy lifting as well as my guidance. But when people think about that, they think, well, what could I do? Maybe it's a walk in nature. Maybe it's meditating. Maybe it's, in some religions, they do a really nice, simple rituals that are helpful. Like when I was visiting various Middle East countries in Islam, they would wash their hands before going into the mosque. And I thought that was beautiful. It's kind of like I'm letting go of the worldly stuff and I'm entering a sacred place. And, it took a minute, but that was a nice little ritual. So you want to find what feels real to you.
Yeah, I just recently got back from a trip to Tokyo and we saw a lot of temples there.
Yeah.
And there was always an area with a water fountain in which you were to not only wash your hands, but rinse your mouth.
Uh-huh.
And then you would go to the temple, and there were certain number of times you clapped and certain number of bows you made, and then putting coins in the in the bin there. And I enjoyed following that ritual. And it 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 could have been any ritual, but the
Yeah.
fact that it was a time-honored ritual gives you the impression, it activates the imagination that somehow power is being created and you're communicating with something larger than yourself. And I mean, it may be placebo, I don't know, but somehow I believe it focuses intention and makes you more open. It's hard to put into words, and I don't know. I mean, I have no idea whether it works or not, but it feels like it does. And maybe that
Sure.
could be a crutch, the fact that it feels like it does, or maybe that could be something real. I don't. I'm gonna weigh in on the don't know on this
Okay,
one.
good. There's a lot of group rituals like what you said, or, maybe singing songs at a church together or chanting together. And group rituals can be very powerful. That's why they're used so much. They focus everybody's energy in the same direction. And when you have, whether it's two people, as Jesus said, or three or more gathered, or forget the quote,
You like to use this quote, but but you never quite remember what
I
it.
never remember. Yeah,
You want me to
that's
look it up?
that's a ritual we have. Me forgetting this quote always makes us laugh. Anyway, so when you get a group of people doing the same ritual, it creates, I think, a harmonized energy that allows people to then experience something deeper or something communal. And that's very important. So there's a lot of group rituals like that religious and even corporations and cultures use. We in America we have the ritual of everybody's watching fireworks July 4th at a certain time, or other things like Christmas. So those can be great, and I think they have impact. The downside is that they can become dead after a while, to you anyways, that it's no longer meaningful, so you're just doing it as a habit, and that's not good. But
Right. And another downside is it could lead to magical thinking, which actually I'm not totally against, to tell you my little
you've
secret.
progressed.
But I think that the important phrase here that you used is the harmonized energy. Uh,
Uh-huh.
in other words, let's say a whole group of people are chanting together, or even just being silent together.
Hmm.
There is a certain sort of keying together of the vibration. You start vibrating together at the same frequency, and a palpable energy is created that you can feel, and then you feel connected with other people. And that connectedness is pointing to the truth of our nature, in that we are all way back in the background of awareness, all connected, all one.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And in some of these rituals, you are like finding your way to that part of yourself that is your true nature or has a higher consciousness, and it becomes automatized. Think of like when you see like basketball players, they're shooting a free throw. They have it is so precise what they're doing, whether, bouncing the ball 3 times, looking, and that ritualized behavior helps them to get into the zone where they can throw those free
Mhm.
throws. That's hard to say. And we're kind of doing the same thing and finding the sacred places within ourselves by doing some of these rituals. So let me talk about some of the different possibilities here. There's so many. And one way of thinking them is in categories. There's group rituals, there's very brief rituals, and then there's more complex rituals. So a very brief ritual might be just saying grace at a meal, but you want to make sure that you're hitting the target, and the target is hopefully to really feel grateful and connected. Saying the word doesn't do anything. So I like these brief ones if they work for you. That might be something like when you tell people, okay, we're going to do a guided meditation. It's kind of funny. If you do that in a group, everybody sits up in a certain way.
Mhm.
That's a ritual of, okay, I'm getting into my meditation stance, and that only takes 5 seconds. But if you notice, most people have that meditative look on their face and such. So that's a very quick one. Over time, I've developed various playlists to have songs. I have like, maybe 60 songs that are things that put me in my heart and are a really good transition to meditation. So that can be a really simple ritual. Now, a lot of people, I know you do this, Brian, have various books and readings with dog-eared pages and such, that you read a passage from a holy book or an author that you like or a teacher you like, and that those little reminders in today's busy world can really make a difference. Any thoughts on any of that?
Well, I agree that the reminders, and I never really thought of them as a ritual, but maybe they are. I've talked about this on this show before. I have a practice, or it's sort of become a second nature habit. Whenever something happens that I don't like, or whenever I have an emotion, so-called negative emotion, and there's this contraction against it as if I don't want to feel that.
Mm-hmm.
That is a signal. That is a reminder to look inside and ask, in what is this appearing?
Mm-hmm.
To turn my attention towards the larger, more inclusive field of awareness in which that emotion is arising, and then include as much else that's appearing in awareness right now. And I do that. I've done it so often that it has become second nature. Is that a ritual?
Well, uh, I think that it can be called a ritual. I would call it more of a alarm clock, and I think it's a great one. But yeah, anything done repeatedly to help get you into a a deeper state of consciousness, higher state of consciousness, I think you could call that a ritual as well.
Mhm. Have you ever seen Rafael Nadal serve a tennis ball?
Yeah, right. That's a level of preciseness down to the atomic nuclei.
Yeah, I mean, first he touches one ear, then he touches the other ear, and then he touches the forehead, and then I mean, it's this whole complex pattern that he does every single time.
Right, right.
Um, Obviously, that focuses his energy. I mean, for
Yeah,
him, it it's like taking a wide spray of a hose and narrowing down the opening so that it's a strong and narrow spray as opposed to wide. And so I think that narrowing the focus is a good possible reason to engage in a ritual.
absolutely. A lot of times people think of rituals in a narrow way because of their upbringing or culture, but I want to talk about some that might open or expand how people are looking at this and give them creative possibilities for what might work even better for them. So at Damanhur, the spiritual community, they had lots of labyrinths, dozens, I think, where people would walk in spirals or different things. And each labyrinth had a different intention. Like this is a labyrinth for listening to your inner wisdom. This is a labyrinth for meditation. This is a labyrinth for connecting to, another force. And I've never been big on labyrinths, but I found them very useful when you get clear on what you're trying to do. And what I liked about them is that they're movement. We have a lot of things where we're sitting still, but this was really a movement meditation. And I'd walk a labyrinth for 10 minutes and then get some kind of insight. And then there'd be a bench there to meditate. And, you can create your own labyrinth, or you could just take a walk in nature or whatever. But I found that really interesting. Another movement one, while we're on that category, is just dance or qigong, that you can move your body in ways that free yourself up. And I find that, even just a minute or two of just kind of relaxing my shoulders and moving my body and shaking it out can be a way of letting go of the stuff from the day.
Do you think that the repetitive nature of a movement adds to the ritualistic effect?
Well, it can for some people. The way we always think is that one size fits all, but in reality, we're all individuals and different things work for different people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to kind of experiment and see what works for you. I think there's an upside to doing the same one every day. And I think there's an upside to like making it what's called authentic movement, meaning what does your body want to do in that moment? And that can be really good. I do both sometimes, depending on how I feel that day.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned washing the bodies. For some people, exercise of different kinds can be a ritual for letting go. Obviously, things like meditative breathing,
Mm-hmm.
take 5 deep breaths, or the inner smile meditation, or it's kind of funny. Many years ago, I did a program for iAwake Technologies called Morning Ritual. And it was a 10-minute guided ritual for preparing for your day. And I did it, and it sold well. If you were interested, you go to iawaketechnologies.com. And people would occasionally tell me, "Oh, I really love that program. It's really made a huge difference in my life to start your day in a positive way." I know people like Tony Robbins, they have pretty intricate morning rituals to really start their day in a positive way. So meditative breathing, different things like that. There can be rituals that you do before meditation and rituals that you do after meditation, or rituals that you do before a meal or after a meal. You want to think of what would serve you in terms of what you need at this point for your spiritual growth. And Damanhur, they had a ritual of befriending a tree. They were surrounded by forests, and everybody chose their own tree to connect with, and it has your name on it, kind of. And I thought that was a really interesting ritual. Just choose one tree in the forest, make a connection, go there and befriend them. And then there's new age things like connecting, as you mentioned earlier, with a rock or crystal or all these amulets. I have a few of those. Something else that Damanhur, they had special things that supposedly, for those who might see us, this is a device, and it's made out of spirals of copper, and supposedly that helps bring joy into your room. There's feng shui. I think, I don't know much about feng shui, but in a way, it could be considered a ritual for creating good energy around you and having an intention in your house. So those things can be powerful. One of my favorite rituals, and I think this is really underrated in this culture, is before I meditate, I like to connect with my pets. I pet my 2 dogs, soon to be 3 dogs. I tell them how much I love them, and there's a back and forth love force that happens between us. And connecting with your heart, however you best connect with your heart, you can't go wrong with that. Do you do anything like that? I know you don't have any pets, but some way of like connecting deeply into your body and heart.
I don't have anything like that, although I do connect with my heart when I simply do the inquiry, looking inside,
Yeah.
and because when I identify with the larger field of awareness as opposed to the individual me, it seems like automatically a connection to love, to allowing, to acceptance, to joy, or simply peace, if you prefer, gets created just almost automatically. It's like you identify with the ground of being, and the ground of being is love and joy. That's heartfelt,
Hmm.
for me, at least.
Yeah, I would say that's your ritual and your way of doing that, and it's alive for you. One thing that I've seen in a lot of devotional guru practices is connecting with a picture of your guru. It could be the Dalai Lama or Ramana Maharshi or whoever, and just looking at that picture and feeling your connection to that being or Jesus or Buddha.
Mhm.
That's a nice little ritual. It only takes 10 seconds possibly, and that can be very powerful. Affirmations. I don't like the term affirmation so much. Statements that mean something to you,
Mhm.
like even the statement, "What's all this arising in?" Is it's a ritual for getting into true nature. And there's other statements that might be questions also, like, who do I love and who loves me?
Mhm.
And those can be ritual ways of moving from a more superficial state of consciousness to something deeper.
Mhm.
Journaling is a ritual, and I'm too lazy to do it, but journaling with intention is a very powerful method for letting go of stuff, for finding a deep place within you. Have you ever done that?
Oh, I have. I'm not a fan. I really dislike journaling a lot, but that's just me. I know that for many people, it's quite meaningful. And I've talked to many sincere people who have used journaling to great effect. It's
Uh-huh.
that we all have our own different shaped locks, and the journaling key doesn't open mine.
Which just shows that, at different things work for different people, obviously, and different things work at different times for different people. So you want to do kind of like a checkup on, are my rituals still working for me?
Yes, that's so important.
Yeah.
In
And
fact,
if
that
not,
really is the key to what you began with, and to the third fetter. Rites and rituals alone, without connection to their meaning.
hmm hmm and I encourage people to have an exploratory and a curiosity and a playful approach to this.
Mm,
In a lot of religious things, the rituals become kind of like heavy, and they don't lead to joy, peace, and love. They lead to like guilt when you're not doing it. You're not going to confession, or you're not doing something. But we tend to do things that are fun and feel good. So maybe your ritual is to eat 3 bites of Haagen-Dazs ice cream before you meditate.
I wish that was an effective.
No, I'm serious. I have done this one because to me, Haagen-Dazs ice cream is almost like a magical, sacred experience. It's very intense, and as long as you're not shoving it down your throat, it can be a meditation where you're really just taking in this incredible taste. Now, in a way, you could say that the Japanese tea ceremony is an element like that. That you're doing everything very mindfully, and then you're really sipping the tea or whatever you're doing with the tea. I don't know much about this, but it's like to get you present.
Yes,
And to me, Haagen-Dazs works better than tea, so I do that, and I have a good time with that. You could do the same thing with a potato chip.
absolutely. As a matter of fact, mindful eating is in itself a ritual.
Yeah.
You taste the food, and you really notice all the sensations in your mouth, and the smells and the flavor, and you're focusing your attention, like you're narrowing the beam. you're becoming mindful, and I think that could come under the ritual category easily.
Yeah. And then there's more what could be called seasonal or deeper rituals that are important. These are things that, in the Jewish religion, you have bar mitzvahs, or in Christianity or Catholicism, there's a lot of those, including seasonal ones like the summer solstice, the winter solstice, or New Year's or Christmas. And these are all to more signify you're symbolizing a deeper change in your life. You're
Mhm.
recognizing I am no longer a kid, I'm an adult, or I'm recognizing it's a new phase in my life. And those can be very powerful, including, say, just a monthly moon ritual.
Mhm.
All these things have been around for thousands of years, and they're there to help us recognize that life is moving forward, that we can step into a new experience of life,
Mhm.
and that if our culture isn't supporting that, well, we can support it with some friends,
Yeah.
go out every full moon and let go of the last month and embrace what you want to embrace in this month.
Yeah, and I've noticed that when I've looked at rituals, especially seasonal rituals in different cultures around the world, it seems to me that the closer that they remain to their origins in nature,
Mm-hmm.
probably the more effective they are. The harvest rituals, the summer solstice, as you mentioned, and the more that they deviate into commercialized or things that have to do with drinking or buying things, the probably the less effective they are.
Probably, we'll take.
Not that I'm necessarily against drinking and buying things. There could be joy in that too, but but it's getting away from the appreciation of how the world really is, how nature really works, what the cycles are, and how you are connected to the cycles and how we all are connected to each other.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you bring up the point, like when rituals go bad. And the way to avoid that is to get clear on what your intention is versus a societal noise.
Yeah.
So take something like Christmas, which at one time was probably a beautiful ritual of some kind, which has descended into a frenzy of buying useless stuff for people you don't always care about or get along with. You know, that's a far cry. So, if you're going against the cultural energy, you have to get more and more clear as to what you want to create. So in Christmas, for example, I made a blanket rule that I'd only buy gifts for two people. I might write letters, I might have a good time, but I the gift buying part of it didn't work for me anymore. And you can create it however you want. I mean, nobody's putting a gun to your head. So, what would a really spectacular, loving, joyous Christmas look like? We
Yeah.
forget to even ask that question.
Yeah. For me, it would involve singing
Yeah,
because that was the Christmas Eve ritual throughout my childhood and well into my adult life, getting together with family and friends and singing. This is, to me, that was just pure joy.
right.
Even if we didn't do it well, but when we did it well, it was more joyful.
Uh-huh. So, you can ask yourself, am I looking for rituals of fun, rituals of letting go, rituals of being in my heart, rituals of transitioning to feeling my true nature, rituals of connection with other people? There's all those categories. And
Yeah.
and once you take it out of the small box that society has put it in, it's a really fun exploration to see what works for you. And that's really the bottom line. What seems to work for you, what's alive for you, what's fun, and how can you create little ones and big ones in your life as kind of alarm clocks, but also as transitional tools to a deeper place within ourselves.
Yeah. And as we were talking, two things occurred to me. One is something to be on the lookout for, and one is has more to do with understanding the real one of the many benefits of ritual. And the thing to look out for is, does it for and let's just use as an example, gazing at a picture of your guru. Now,
Uh-huh.
this and as you said, one size does not fit all. And for many people, this is really effective. But the danger is that it's putting something outside. It's saying happiness or joy or spiritual awakening is out there. Someone else has it. I don't have it. And the idea is to connect to that thing outside of me and bring it in. And usually, I think the opposite is required. It's what turns your attention around from outside to inside, from what you're looking at to what's looking. I think that so if your ritual can do that, I think even better. And sometimes if your guru happens to stress self-inquiry, for example, then it could very well be that gazing at the picture will turn your attention around from outside to inside. There's always a danger that it won't.
Hmm.
And the second point I want to make is I was thinking about rituals, just everyday rituals, like when you were talking about morning rituals. I have a ritual in the morning. I make tea, I take my meds. When I finish my tea and my other things that I have to do in the morning, I go to the gym and ride the bike and do my flashcards to study Mandarin. And this is a ritual. When I was acting a lot in plays, every play would have a ritual beforehand, and the ritual involved the order in which I do things, the order in which I put on my tie, the order in which I put on my makeup, the order in which, everything that is done before, and you try and do the same every performance. And the value of all of this to me was not in the specifics of the ritual. The value was in the letting go of the self as decision maker, the letting go,
Mm.
the giving over to a pattern so that I don't have to now decide what to do. I'm not necessarily in control of everything I do. I give in and I allow this pattern of activity to sort of do itself. And it kind of minimizes that identification with the separate self, or it can when done well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's really a letting go process. And mostly what our job in spirituality is to let go of our identification with the small self so we can relax into our true nature.
Yes.
So rituals, a lot of rituals are really a letting go of your control in little ways so that you can better do that.
Yes, yeah, I think it's key.
Yeah. So let's do a little guided meditation that might help people connect with their old rituals or new rituals in a way that is alive and helpful to them.
Oh,
So, uh, and this can be done eyes open or closed. And it's really more of a asking questions and listening for what feels right to you, what feels like it might be useful for you at this point. So if you can close your eyes, you can do that. Take a couple of deep breaths, which is a ritual for getting into meditation. And then I want you to think about when you've done a ritual that felt alive to you, that helped you to let go of your day, of your concerns, and just be present. It might have been listening to a song or looking at a tree or doing some specific behavior that just helped you to let go of all the stuff of life and just be present with your heart with your awareness. And remember, if you can, exactly what you were doing or what actions helped you to let go and be here now. It could be very simple or have some steps to it. But try to remember that feeling of doing this meaningful, intentional activity that just allowed you to deepen into yourself. And how good that felt. I'd like you to imagine how you can open up this magical box of rituals with all kinds of little toys in there to explore. And it could be breathing rituals or song rituals or nature rituals, befriending a tree or journaling or reading from a holy book. But what would be something that you might explore that would feel good to you as a little thing that you could do maybe once a day or once a month that would help guide you in a simple and friendly way to a deeper place within yourself. Just listen or think about what feels exciting or right to you at this point. I'll give you a minute to just imagine that. What ritual or rituals might you add to your life? That bring you to a place of greater peace, gratitude, or love. And as you think about these, you can imagine doing them, maybe in the morning or before meditating or before a meal, whatever feels alive and good to you. And it can be a little gift that you give you to yourself one or many times a day, a new exploration that opens up new possibilities for deepening your spirit ritual life. And if you came up with some good stuff, as you very slowly come back to the room, you might even write a note or two to yourself, an intention of, hey, I'd like to do this before I meditate or before I eat or when connecting in any way that you find helpful. And then it's just a matter of exploring and seeing what feels alive to you. So as you slowly come back to the room, maybe write a note or two, then you can ritualized re-enter your day as you see fit and hopefully open up some new doors. Welcome back. Was that helpful, Brian?
It was very helpful. Thank you for
Good.
that. Yeah. I don't want to give anyone the idea that there's one better result of that than others, because everyone will be different. But it put me in mind of that practice that I talked about earlier. Whenever I have an emotion I think I may not want, I ask, what is the clear allowing field of awareness in which this appears? And then see if I identify with that. And what occurred to me during your meditation is I don't have to wait for the triggers. I can ritualize that for every beginning of any new activity. Sitting down to eat, and it can take seconds. Sitting down at the computer to do some work, and it can take seconds. Starting to watch TV in the evening, it can take seconds. Going out for a walk, meeting a friend. If you just take a second and say, what is the clear, allowing, empty, spacious field of awareness in which this appears? And is that the real me?
Uh-huh.
So that's what came to me during your meditation, for whatever it's worth.
Great. I like to shorten that even to 2 words or 3 words. What's this in?
What's this in? Or in what? I think you've mentioned
In what? Yeah, right.
It's even only 2 words.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
sure. Absolutely. I added all the extra words, which I don't really need anymore, because I know I added them just to sort of help, as like little helper words, in case you didn't know what I was talking about, because what I'm describing is not something very describable in words.
It is tough. I do want to put a shout out to our Patreon supporters. We do send our Patreon supporters a lot of extra stuff each month. And if you're interested in supporting us, go to patreon.com/awareness explorers. And you can support us at any level you want. And we send you extra blogs and interviews and all kinds of summaries of our sessions. So it's really worth it. And tell your friends, the more you connect with people over this stuff, the better you serve yourself and other people as well. And we're honored that you spend your time with us. Any last words?
This was fun. And on my part, it was really sort of, flying by the seat of my pants. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, explorations are good. And that's why we're committed to keeping these explorations alive and fresh and hopefully useful to you. And till next time, many blessings and keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Thank you for listening to Awareness Explorers. To learn more, you can check out our website at awarenessexplorers.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. We'd love it if you would post a review. And please share our link on Facebook and with family and friends, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself or someone you love.